Memories of a time, America in its golden years. There are autumn afternoons when the late sunlight falls gently across the rooftops, and I feel as if I am living once more in years long past. It was the time after World War II and through the late 1960s, a period when the whole nation seemed to take a deep breath after so many weary years. Everything felt new, full of promise, as though inviting everyone to step out and explore. Freshly paved streets, department stores filled with goods that sparkled under bright lights, suburban neighborhoods lined with white picket fences and lawns as green as new spring leaves. Our world then was not as loud as it is now, yet every day brimmed with things that made the heart race, perhaps because so many of them were firsts for us. When you lived in those days, you knew the feeling of a car being more than transportation. It was a door opening to freedom. The TV in the living room was more than an appliance. It was a ticket to faraway lands, and a handwritten letter was more than words on paper. It was the only bridge between those separated by half the world. Today, I want to take you back to 3 chapters of memory carved deep in my heart. The age of the automobile boom, when every family dreamed of a gleaming Chevy Bel Air or a powerful Ford Mustang. The era of black and white television giving way to a burst of color when whole neighborhoods gathered to watch the new world unfold, and the war and post-war years filled with loss, waiting, and hope when we Americans learned to stand together stronger than ever. Sit down, take a sip of hot coffee, and let me guide you back in time, slowly, the way we once lived, unhurried but full. The age of the automobile. Boom. I still remember clearly that midday when my father drove home a brand-new Chevy Bel Air. The noontime sun glinted off its two-tone red and cream paint, making it look like a giant piece of candy dropped right onto our front yard. The neighborhood kids swarmed around, their eyes wide with admiration. And I, only 10 years old, stood proudly beside my father, feeling as though we owned a treasure. The 1950s and 1960s in America were the golden years of the automobile. After the war, factories that once built tanks and planes shifted to making civilian cars. The interstate highway system began stretching across the nation, turning long trips into dreams one could actually realize. Every family wanted a car, not just to commute to work, but to explore the country. The Chevy Bel Air, with its powerful V8 engine, gleaming chrome trim, and curves as smooth as an ocean wave, became an icon. Behind its wheel, you felt you could go anywhere. At a red light, you were not just waiting, you were showing the whole street your pride. Then in 1964, Ford introduced the Mustang. I remember first seeing one in a parking lot near my high school. Long body, pointed nose, a grille that glinted like the eyes of a wild creature ready to leap. The Mustang ushered in the muscle car era, cars built not just for driving, but for expressing youth's strength, style, and ambition. If there was one place that embodied that time, it was Route 66. Each summer, my family would pack the trunk with suitcases, my mother making sandwiches, and filling a jug with lemonade, and off we went. On both sides of the road were little gas stations, neon-lit diners, and motels shaped in all sorts of ways, some like Native American teepees, others like spaceships. At night, my father would drive under a star-filled sky, the headlights stretching ahead like a white ribbon, the car radio playing Elvis Presley or Buddy Holly. The whole trip became a chain of perfect memories. I still remember the scent of new leather seats, the faint rattle of windows when the car picked up speed, and the boundless sense of freedom when everything ahead was open road. Drive-in diners were part of that car culture. You would pull into a spot, press a button, and minutes later a waitress in a flared skirt and roller skates would bring out burgers, fries, and a milkshake. You ate in your car, listening to music from the radio, watching the world go by without stepping outside. And then there were the drive-in theaters, the Saturday night paradise of youth. Whole neighborhoods would arrive, rows of cars lined up, each with a small speaker hooked to the window. As darkness fell, the movie began. Sometimes laughter or cheers drifted from nearby cars. To us, it was a world of its own, movies, snacks, and the first stirrings of young romance, all under a starry sky. The era of black and white and color television. If cars were the wings that took us to faraway places, the television was the doorway to the world right in our living room. I can still picture the day my father brought home our first black and white TV, a solid wooden box with a curved screen and 2 dials that clicked softly when turned. That evening the whole family gathered around as if awaiting a miracle. My grandparents sat in armchairs, my parents on the sofa, while my siblings and I sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes locked on the screen. Flickering light danced across faces utterly absorbed. Shows like I Love Lucy, The Ed Sullivan Show, Bonanza, and Leave It to Beaver became part of daily life. We laughed until we cried at Lucy and Ricky's antics, held our breath during news bulletins, and waited eagerly for Ed Sullivan to present new talent. When Elvis Presley appeared, every kid on the block went wild while many parents shook their heads but smiled. Television then created true community evenings. If you did not have one, you went to a neighbor's house to watch. Without the internet or mobile phones, witnessing a live event together was unforgettable. Some nights the entire block sat silently, eyes fixed on the screen, sharing the same heartbeat. I vividly recall the story of the first color TV in our neighborhood in the early 1960s, when the Petersons bought one. The news spread quickly, and that night almost the whole block gathered at their home. When the wonderful world of color began, and blue skies and bright red dresses filled the screen, the room erupted in gasps. To us, it was not just new technology, it was magic. Television back then came with rituals now gone. When the picture went fuzzy, someone had to adjust the antenna, sometimes on the roof, and occasionally the image cleared only if the person stayed frozen in that position, sending everyone into laughter. Without remote controls, changing channels meant standing up to turn the dial, a task often given to the kids. Stations signed off at midnight, usually with the national anthem, an image of the flag, and a good night message. Then came the hiss and static of an empty screen. The impact of TV on culture was undeniable. It changed how we were entertained, informed, and connected. It took us to places we had never seen, and gave the nation a shared story. For me, those memories are not just of black and white or vivid color images, but of families and neighborhoods all facing one direction, living the same moment together. The war and post-war years. I grew up in a house open to the morning sun and to news from faraway places. The war was not on our doorstep, but it was present at the dinner table, in the folded newspapers on the kitchen counter, and in the way my mother glanced at the mailbox out front. Adults spoke softly, children listened on the edges, and amid the sounds of a moving America, there were still moments of silence, still as a lake. Letters from the front afternoons had a sacred hour when the mail arrived. The dirt road before our house seemed suddenly solemn at the sound of the postman's steps. My mother often stood at the doorway, hands dusted with flour. The postman raised an envelope. She took it quietly and nodded. Every envelope carried 2 cents, the must of long travel and the human warmth from far away. I remember the sound of the letter opener slicing paper. Slanted lines appeared, steady and neat, telling of long days in camp, a rare hot meal, the smell of rain-soaked earth in a place with no familiar name. Between the lines were spaces holding things the writer could not say or did not wish to burden us with. My mother would finish reading, press her lips, smile faintly, then fold the letter carefully and place it in a brown wooden box on the wall. The box held the letters, the unspoken things she kept deeper, perhaps in her heart. Letters did not come often, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly. On days without letters, evenings felt longer. On days they arrived, supper tasted better, the soup was hotter, and the kitchen lights stayed on later. Stars on the porch. Many porches in our neighborhood bore small banners with red borders, white centers, and a blue star in the middle. They told neighbors that a son or son-in-law was in the service. Some banners bore a gold star instead. Walking past a porch with a gold star, my steps slowed. No one told us to, but everyone understood it was sacred. Adults removed their hats, children stopped their games, even the wind seemed to hush. Every spring memorial services took place in the small square before the town hall. A brass band played solemn music. The scent of freshly cut grass mingled with the old paint of the monument and the fabric of large flags. Veterans wore worn jackets and polished shoes, medals on their chests. As names were read, birds called from the maples, and somewhere there was the rustle of tissues. These rituals kept a shared rhythm, reminding us that some private sacrifices belong to the whole community. Radio, newspapers, and breathless evenings. Before TV became common, radio was the country's main storyteller. My father kept ours on the kitchen windowsill. Evenings found us around the table, spoons in hand, ears tuned to a slow, steady voice from far away. At important news, my father turned up the volume. We all held our breath. Afterward, no one spoke immediately. Silence, then the soft clink of cutlery, the sound of daily life resuming. Morning papers lay at the front door. My grandfather would spread them flat on the table, smoothing each page. He read slowly, completely. Sometimes he tapped a finger on an article, then explained it in words we could understand. Through him, distant places took shape, and dry numbers became meaningful. Homecomings. Every war ends at some bend in the road. Soldiers returned in waves, like scattered early rains. Our small-town station filled with embraces and awkward pauses, as though time caught in the throat. Some came home whole, eyes bright with the sight of their lawns green. Others returned with wooden crutches, an empty sleeve, or a quiet that defied words. Some never came home at all, and the Gold Star porches stayed silent at dusk. Small gatherings bloomed in backyards. Apple pies on tables, the scent of barbecue in the air, children racing with paper cups of lemonade. Adults spoke of new jobs, buying used cars, repainting fences, planting rose bushes. Few spoke of what had happened far away. They looked toward what was right there. A house needing paint, a nursery needing a crib, a new road leading to a suburb a few miles out. The shape of a dream. After the war, suburbs rose like newly planted trees. Single-story homes, neat lawns, garages for one car. Afternoons saw fathers in white T-shirts pushing mowers, the smell of cut grass coloring the sky. Children played ball with tin cans or hid among lilac bushes. My mother hung up the kitchen towel, turned on the radio for a cooking show, and baked cookies. New neighborhoods brought new habits, Saturday car washes, Sunday family dinners, Monday lunchbox packing. The postman's bicycle often moved alongside the milk truck, both stopping at houses so similar you could lose your way if not for the numbers. Yet within the sameness, every family wrote its own quiet story, a handmade swing, a tomato patch, a photo taped by the calendar. Invisible wounds. Not everyone left the war behind easily. Some nights fathers lingered longer than usual on the porch, eyes far away, coffee cups cooling in their hands. My mother knew when to speak, when to touch a shoulder. That silence was its own language, saying, "Here you are safe. Here is bread fresh from the oven, children's laughter, and time slow enough to breathe again." Some older boys from my street went away and came back changed. One had been the best baseball player we knew. When we met again, his smile was slower. We sat on the steps, talking about the high school team, his worn glove, whether they would make the finals this year. When night came, he stood, waved, and I knew some stories should remain there, not because they were too heavy, but because friendship sometimes needs only a wave and a pat on the back. The strength of community. I loved the weekend markets on the town square. Stalls formed a U around the old fountain, apple pies, jars of jam, small bouquets of carnations, a few old radios, worn magazines. People bought a little, talked a little, asked after each other's parents, invited the kids to play ball later. These bits of talk wove a strong thread binding us together. If someone was sick, the neighborhood brought soup. If someone lost a job, the grocer gave credit until harvest. If a letter arrived from afar, their house stayed lit late, and the next day neighbors stopped by, laying a hand on their arm without needing to say more. America. After the storms. Looking back, I see that the nation weathered great storms by leaning on each other. Cars took people to new places. Television brought news into the living room. Letters kept the thread between those away and those at home unbroken. Highways completed, bridges spanned rivers, factories steamed again, schools opened new classes, and ballparks were christened with Sunday afternoon games in bright sunlight. People called that era one of hope. Hope was not a slogan. It was the way a mother set fresh flowers on the table, a father fixed a broken chair, neighbors greeted each other each morning. Hope lived in doing the small things right over and over until they made a whole life. Looking back on those 3 chapters of memory, I see they were never separate, but woven together like threads in a tapestry. The rumble of a V8 on the highway recalls summer trips with my family, every tire's hum, a heartbeat of youth. The light of the TV screen on loved ones' faces is still vivid in my mind, along with the laughter and gasps of an entire neighborhood when color images first appeared. The letters from the front, the stars on porches, the afternoons waiting for the postman, these have become inseparable from my life story. We often think memory rests in big events, but with time I have realized what lasts longest are the simple moments. A hand turning the wheel onto a country road, a child sitting at their parents' feet during a TV show, a glance exchanged as an envelope is opened. Such small things hold more than a historical era. They carry the weight of human feeling. Today, roads still stretch toward the horizon, but few use paper maps. TVs still glow in living rooms, but their light comes from screens as thin as paper, connecting to the world with a single click. Letters remain, but seldom carry life-changing news. Much has changed, yet I believe the spirit of connection, the cherishing of each moment, and the faith in a better tomorrow remain. If I close my eyes, I can still hear tires rolling along Route 66, see the TV's glow on my family's faces, and feel the warmth of homecoming embraces. Those echoes have not vanished. They are like a small lamp still burning in my memory, guiding me back to America's golden years when every day felt complete, no matter how simple. And if someday you find yourself sitting on a porch with a hot cup of coffee, let the breeze carry you back to where your memories began. Because sometimes the best way forward is to remember the road you have already traveled, with all the love and gratitude it holds.